Hello. It's good to catch up with everyone again in today's episode. I want to talk about a very dirty four-letter word. That word is rest. Rest, rest, rest. I would love to know if this resonates with you. You have a day off work and you have no plans. Your family is busy doing something, your friends have their own things to do, and you have a luxurious day ahead of you of doing absolutely nothing. It's going to be wall to wall self care, bubble baths, catching up on whatever Netflix show you're currently binging, just not getting out of bed, sleeping in, chilling out. And the day arrives and you're in bed and you're cozy. Maybe your pets are snuggling with you. Everything is perfect. The temperature is just right. The coffee or tea or whatever your beverage of choice is just lit. And there's this feeling that starts to arise. It's starting to bubble up, and maybe it settles in your stomach or up in your chest. Maybe your throat starts to constrict. Maybe you start to notice your heart is palpitating, and you realize you're having a sense of anxiety, or maybe some sense of dread. And um, thank you for the hair props. It's very windy. I have the window open, so just going where it needs to go. You're feeling this sense of dread or terror that you're forgetting something, that there's something you forgot to do or something that needs to get done, or it just doesn't feel good to just rest, to just lay there, to enjoy the quiet moment. There is something like you need to get busy. There needs to be something you should be doing. You're wasting precious time. You're having the sensation of you're wasting your precious time. There's so much you could be fitting into this day. And maybe you went into the day thinking that. Maybe you had that day off of work and you had this to-do list that was 100 items long, and you're like, this is going to be the perfect day for me to catch up on all of the things that I've been letting go by the wayside, or having to deprioritize. This is going to be the perfect day to do all of those things. Forget the rest, forget the rejuvenation. Like, let's just focus on how much we can fit into our day. Does any of that resonate? I know I have been there. I know I was in a place where I couldn't even watch TV without multitasking some other thing. I couldn't even go for a walk on a treadmill without taking my laptop and working on work stuff. When I was writing, I would write on the treadmill or voice note things for later. Anytime I was taking time for me, I was multitasking and doing something else, because I had this deep seated belief that rest was equated with laziness, that every moment of your waking life, you needed to be productive. You needed to be doing something for the greater good of society, for the greater good of your family, for the greater good of your ambition, your career, your whatever. So I know for me, growing up and early adulthood, having any kind of downtime meant that I was basically being sinful, for lack of a better word, that I was being lazy, that I was being selfish and inconsiderate of the people around me, of my home, of my family, of my friends and my community and my job. Feeling stressed while trying to rest was my body giving me a survival cue that it isn't safe to slow down. It isn't safe to take time for me because there will be some kind of repercussions. And our body doesn't really, especially when we're growing up with like this stress of you need to be doing. You need to be productive all the time. Rest is lazy. People who take naps in the middle of the day are bad people, right? There's all of this judgment around rest. So, like, I grew up with you needed to be like really proactive and engaged and studying and or working on your betterment somehow, or working on the betterment of your community, if that was your household or wider your church, whatever. And so when I would rest, part of my body would go into a stress mode because that was a survival mechanism saying that I was going to get in trouble or, something was going to fail. Your body can't tell the difference between, especially when you're younger, um, whether a consequence is a big deal or not. Everything feels very life or death, right? Like consequences matter. They're very scary when you're young. And so this belief gets trapped in the body. So as an adult, and you need some damn downtime, your body is starting to activate and tell you that you're not safe. And so that's why you start having these stress responses when you need to be resting. So how do you combat that? Well, there's one other thing I want to cover. And there is another major reason why we start to feel stressed out when we start to slow down. And that is all of those things that you've been ignoring, all of those stories, all of those beliefs, all of those feelings that you've been shoving down now have space to kind of bubble up and go, hey, I know you couldn't pay attention to me earlier when you were stressed out about this other thing, but you've slowed down and now I'm the squeaky wheel. We live in a culture that doesn't value emotionality. We live in a culture where we don't make space for people to feel their feelings. Most corporate jobs maybe offer 3 days of bereavement when you lose an immediate family member. They don't provide space for humans to play out their emotions. They expect you to come to work and be a machine and not a human being. So we often don't make space to feel our feelings. So when we start to slow down and we start to rest, this stuff starts to come up. The other thing is that when we start to make room for rest and we start to prioritize rest and we start to really lean into slowing down, our body begins to crave it more. I know when I really started to activate my superpower of rest, I found myself needing more and more and more of it. Because as I was resting, I was sitting with the things that were coming up that I had ignored. I was sitting with trauma and grief and sadness and fear that I had ignored for so long with busyness, workaholism, numbing activities like, drinking too much or partying too much, whatever it was, dancing too much. You can't dance too much. Just ignore that. No, I didn't say that. Dancing is amazing. So these feelings start to come up, and having to make space for your feelings can require even more rest. Just like when you're grieving something, and that can create a lot of tiredness and exhaustion in the body. Dealing with any heavy emotions, any emotions really, can be exhausting. The body needs space to process that. Okay, so we have a few reasons of why we feel stressed when we start to rest. What can you do to combat it? Unpopular opinion warning, schedule it. Fucking schedule it. Put it in your calendar and make it a goddamn priority. Every single Friday, I have a 3-hour block. A 3-hour block. Maybe that doesn't sound like a lot. Maybe that sounds like, oh my God, how can you just sit still for 3 hours? I love it. It was so hard. It was so hard at first. I was like, oh, I need to be doing something. I don't do anything. I lay in bed and I stare at the wall, or I lay down and play with my cats on the floor. And then I stay there for however long. Maybe sometimes I'll watch a movie or a snack, but usually, like, I'm not doing anything. I don't have the TV on. I don't have a podcast on. I usually just lay and rest. Sometimes I sleep and sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's more than 3 hours and sometimes it's less, but I have it blocked off in my calendar so that if somebody says, hey, do you want to like go do something at 3 p.m. on a Friday? No, I'm busy. I'm busy resting. That is my space. That is just for me. That is just for me. I also have blocks around my workday to make sure that I am taking breaks and I am rejuvenating myself and taking care of my body and taking care of my mind and taking care of my feelings. I also limit the number of activities that I do in a day. It used to be like I would fit in like 10 different things on a Saturday with my people or organizations I was interested in or hobbies or whatnot. I would have like so many things I would jump around to. Oh my gosh, no wonder I burned out. It was just too much. And now I try to keep things like really straightforward, like one, maybe two things a day, depending on how intensive they are. I also put guardrails around like visiting certain people. Like I will never spend more than 3 hours with my family at a time because my family can trigger me in some ways and really unbalance me, and I need to have boundaries there. I love my family. My folks are amazing. I'm so grateful to have an amazing loving family, but also they can be a lot with their unresolved issues and their unresolved trauma that they don't want to work on or are able to see. That's fine. But I have to have guardrails around that. So scheduling is so important. The Even if it's just a few hours a week, right? Like, and then putting time limits on your day. Like, I don't have anything scheduled after 8 o'clock on weekdays or weekends, honestly. It just depends. But yeah, I try to like start to slow down at 8 o'clock. I tend to wake up really early. I have really early mornings, which I love. I'm not a morning person. Don't misconstrue that. I love to get up early because there's no one else up and then I don't have to talk to anybody. I'm not a morning person. Whenever I do sleepovers with friends, I'm like, look, I have a 2 hour time limit from between the time I get up and the time you can talk to me. I have a process. I'm not a morning person, but I like to be up early because that's what feels good. And again, I have boundaries, employing boundaries around your rest and around your limits and understanding what those limits are and being able to carefully communicate those is so important for really protecting your rest and protecting yourself. So, just to recap, we talked about why we stress out when we rest, and it's our body's survival response based on how we were raised in our cultures. The deeply ingrained belief in our culture that resting is equated with laziness, which is a moral deficiency, which is not true. Rest is productive. Rest is 100% productive. Our stress around rest may come up from having not dealt with our feelings and trapped emotions for too long. And so this can start to bubble up when we begin to rest. And that can be very scary if we don't know how to titrate and make space for that. And yeah, rest is so important. Again, rest is productive. You absolutely have to rest in order to heal. You have to rest in order to be the best version of yourself. Pushing yourself and sacrificing yourself for other people is actually taking away from who you're wanting to serve. Taking time for yourself to be the best version of yourself is essential. Rest is essential. You can't do good work in this world without taking care of yourself first, because you are an important building block of this world, of this universe. Everyone matters. Everyone is loved. And it's important that we start with ourselves first. So I hope this little riff about rest and stress was helpful. I would love to hear what you thought of it in the comments. And if you're looking for tips and tricks on how to incorporate more rest, how to feel more safe in your resting, how to create better boundaries, please sign up for my newsletter. Link in my bio. I cannot wait to support you. Much love, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Ta-ta for now.